the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't saying a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it, like I'm being who I need.
We're going to be seeing a massive recall of all these people going and being like, hey, I'm actually not trans, I need to detransition now, and they're now realizing that they are sterilized, that they are... Hello everyone, my name is Alex Daly, and today I'm going to be filming part 2 of the Trans and Detransitioners Jubilee Middle Ground video. Just for a little bit of background information about who I am, I live in New South Wales, Australia. I am 25 years old. I have been transitioning for the past 7 years. Started seeing a psychiatrist when I was 17, and then after 12 months of appointments, I started transitioning on hormones. And for the past 7 years, I've been living as a transsexual. My political opinions definitely lean more to the right side of politics. I find myself to be more of a Republican in terms of politics. I find that when it comes to trans issues specifically, I do fall a little bit more onto the right side of politics. I do believe that it's become an issue that is a lot more blown out of proportion than to what it really is. It is something that should be not available for children to do, and being trans is something that is definitely a last resort and not the first form of treatment when it comes to seeing a psychiatrist and gender affirming care. I definitely disagree with all of that. So the first section I'm going to watch from this video is social media brainwash teens to believe that they are trans. 100%. I would definitely find that one of the biggest culprits is definitely TikTok. I just started using TikTok a little bit more properly for the first time the other day when I was just putting out a couple clips from a previous video. But I was really shocked that when I went to the search section, it started suggesting questions that I would never actually search myself. But let me explain. So I love this YouTuber. Her name is Amala Ekanobi, I believe. I can't pronounce that last name, but her name's Amala. She's an amazing, more conservative YouTuber. She definitely reports on everything that's trans related and whatnot to do with specifically in politics. One of the first things that I saw when I went into the search section was Amala Humbled. And I haven't searched her or anything like that at all on TikTok. It seemed to know that maybe I was more interested in that topic, but I wanted to go for the complete opposite end of the videos that I would generally watch about her. Straight off the bat, straight into using the app, that it's already trying to sort of indoctrinate me into some sort of leftist ideology, because that was definitely a lefty search question. Yeah.
Brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's this play that they have.
I don't think that it necessarily brainwashes children, but I think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans because it's trendy. And I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it, I have experienced it. And I also find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids so much misinformation and lead to people thinking they're trans when there are much deeper issues. And everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young. You know?
I think brain.
It's not even that there are much deeper issues, it's that they're at an impressionable age. That's why people who try to indoctrinate, they know the first thing you do is go for someone who's younger, someone who's more vulnerable and doesn't know how the world works, because their brains are still malleable. They're still easy to sway whatever a political ideology you wanted to push onto them. And it's simple. It's just that they're young and impressionable, and they're going through something like puberty, which makes completely no sense to anyone when they're going through it. Like, their body is changing so dramatically, they're feeling uncomfortable, and they've been given this solution in the form of an ideology, which is trans ideology or gender ideology. And it's like, you can be all these things and they'll fix all these problems, they'll fix all these feelings that you have. You don't feel comfortable, you feel like you don't belong. Oh, it's because you're trans. It's just a trans trend.
I think brainwash is such a strong
that's
word
a very
to use
aggressive
there
word. I
when
would
it's
not. That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy on social media. Like in my transition, Tumblr, that was the place to be for sure. And everyone was talking about their transition from my experience, and everyone was talking about a lot of mental health issues, depression, and all of that, and it was kind of being trendy in that sense. Like when TikTok came out, like that was like a whole nother world. And the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't seeing a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it, like I'm being who I need.
Yeah, and that goes the same for every single form of social media. When it comes to Instagram, everyone only posts their best day, their best moment. No one's ever posting the downside of A, B, and C. I mean, people do, but then it's not always a good look. It's a little bit distasteful to be posting something negative. But in a sense, like, not that we should be posting negative things always out there, but we should definitely be highlighting that there are cons and there are negative effects to going down this pathway, and being pipelined down into the trans category. There is so many drawbacks that if you were given them all up front and given a full encyclopedia of all the things that could go wrong and the things that you will experience at an appropriate age, of course, because you have to be 18 at least to start transitioning. I think a little bit older, but 18 is fine. In my sense, it's much better than what's actually really happening. People are getting pipelined down these surgeries and they're going and getting things like sexual reassignment surgery at like underage, or they're getting it even as adults, and they're being completely uninformed of what it actually entails and what it does mean, and the fact that it is just a bit of a con of a surgery, that it is crossing the barrier of self-harm, crossing that barrier, that threshold that is, we are now treating you into self-deprivation. An example I gave in another video is you're taking an anorexic person and you're telling them, yes, we can help you lose more weight. It's the same thing. You're going to kill them. You're going to send them down a pipeline when it comes to being trans and getting sexual reassignment surgery. 10 years down the track, the statistics show that you are 17 times more likely to kill yourself. And when it comes to things like detransitioners, there's a time period and how long it actually takes for people who do transition to actually come to realization of the fact that they were not truly trans. And for women, I think it's 2 to 4 years or something in that range. Women transitioning to men, that is. And then when it comes to men transitioning to women, it generally takes them about 10 years to get to that point of realizing, oh, I've made a mistake here, I need to go back. So all these people that you see transitioning in the past like 5, 6, 7 years, we're going to be seeing a massive recall of all these people going and being like, hey, I'm actually not trans, I need to detransition now. And they're now realizing that they are sterilized, that they are permanently disfigured, that they'll never be able to have an orgasm because they have a new set of genitalia, which is completely useless. It is not going to work, and you can't undo the surgery. People dying from things like sepsis, people are going to be getting things like cancers from using hormone replacement therapy for extended periods of time. And we don't even have the studies to show what happens when you put someone on hormone replacement therapy for 20, 30 years. And that's what's happening, especially when it comes to children. When we're putting them on hormones, we're setting them up to be medicalized for life, and we don't even know what the side effects are of these medicines that we're giving them and how it's going to actually affect them down the track. We don't know. We could be setting them up for some really, really sick, unfortunate things, aside from the fact that we're already taking away so many things like their fertility and their right to just grow up as the gender that they were born.
Outlook on it, like I'm being who I need to be, like this is great.
This is the ticket to your happiness.
Yeah, and
that's how it's sold.
like so much on social media. Like I made a documentary on my transition, and I really went into depth of like a lot of my depression that I dealt with on that, and I didn't find anyone talking about that.
I personally didn't think I was trans till I saw earlier trans YouTubers. Before I was just gender bending man. And for sure, I also feel like comparing yourself on social media to other people that are more beautiful and successful will create dysphoria of some kind. And some people,
it will affect your self-image for sure.
Because we see all those beautiful trans women that are all dolled up or had every possible plastic surgery they could ever get. You're gonna feel dysphoria. You're gonna be like, I don't look like that.
I mean, that's
so I
in
have to go
general,
through
though.
steps.
You know what I mean? Whether you're cis
Right.
or trans, everyone
So social
is
media has
dealing with
such a-
that
I've
for
fallen into
sure.
that
It
for
has
looking
such
at,
a bad impact on
actors
mental
and stuff.
health.
I wanted to be that much.
Yeah, it's social media, it sets this impossible standard for what you believe that you can achieve when it comes to transitioning. It sets you up for these beliefs that you will be able to become a completely different person. I think we all know when it comes to social media that obviously there's a whole bunch of impossible standards that are set, and we see them every single day, and it's sort of just about sort of deciphering between what we know is real and what we know isn't real. And you'll find that it more often than not falls into that this is not realistic category.
Impact
actors
on
and
mental
stuff. I
health.
wanted to be that muscular dude, and I wanted to do
100%.
that. So
No,
yeah,
It is such a
does
bad,
exist.
like, well-documented bad impact on people's like sense
Right.
of self and mental health, and so.
But I also really quickly just want to say, like, I don't want people to think that, like, social media is turning
Yeah.
people trans.
Yeah, we agree with that.
All right, can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just gonna go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun. Try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake.
Yeah, but I think it is also important to say that like social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok and I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like all these different things. And like it can suck you in. So it's important to be aware of those things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
See, now how do I feel about that? Like the last thing I ever want to do is inspire people who are not trans to transition, and then even people who are trans, like what I would love to inspire is for people who are questioning their gender to really, really give it the best shot possible at learning to love yourself and love who you are, how you look, and what gender you were born as much as you can and as best as you can, and go and get the help that you need with therapy. So go see a psychiatrist, go see a psychologist, get those conversations started on things like, I'm worried about gender dysphoria, and let them sort of guide you into self-love rather than transitioning. And if they're sort of pushing you to transition, go and see a different doctor, because that doctor's not out to help you. They're out to make a quick buck off of you. I'm not trying to put down Samantha and say that what she does is wrong, because I haven't watched her videos. But if she's not conscious of the fact that it is so easy to fall for the trans ideology and believe that it is right for you when it isn't, if she's not taking that into account, then that could be a little bit of a problem when it comes to her formatted video. I'm not too sure. I'll have to check it out myself. But the thing is, when it comes to YouTube is free, whereas therapy isn't. It's all well and good to sort of say, like, go to a doctor as well, but unless you're reminding people and making it very clear that this is not the right pathway for everyone. In fact, it is not the right pathway for most people suffering from gender dysphoria, then I think that that could be a little bit of a problem.
Appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand. That's not my
And
problem.
I feel like a lot of folks are going to social media looking for possibility models. They're looking to see if they're okay. I know for me, when I was very young, looking to see if there were other people like me, because for a long time I thought that I was
The only one.
Exactly.
I thought I was the
right.
only one.
And so feeling like that, like suicide was a thing for me.
Me too.
Right. And so when I did see a possibility model, when I did see somebody that looked like me, that put me in a space where I was like, I'm okay.
Sigh of relief.
Right.
I will say there's also a difference from like showing people that you can have a positive life and then telling them what to do. So I think you on your channel are kind of like, hey, look what I was able to do and how this made me feel, versus like, you should do this because I did this.
Right.
So I
And I'm
think,
also, I try my best to be very upfront
right,
about, you know, the
because
issues
we
of
can't help if
transition.
someone's
Exactly.
going to change their mind on something. Like that's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're humans.
And I have to jump
Yeah.
on one more thing with that. Like, if I'm watching her channel and it inspires me to transition, I have been watching white.
If you're watching something and you've only now become someone who's now inspired to transition, that's a problem. That definitely means that you are needing to get therapy to sort of help you come to terms with the gender that you are, because you shouldn't be becoming inspired to become trans, because you don't become trans, you are trans.
Straight men be president for years, and I've not wanted to be president once, so I don't identify with that. If we're going to talk about brainwashing, let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically.
So that was the social media brainwashes teens to think that they are trans section of the detransitioner versus trans middle ground video. I'm now going to watch the last section of this video, and it's called "The LGBT Society is Not as Accepting as They Claim." My stance on this is, yeah, no, they're 100% the complete opposite of what they claim. They claim to be all-inclusive and diverse and loving, but it's only when it comes to something like an identity signal. It's not actually ever diversity of beliefs, diversity of opinion, diversity from the status quo. It is whatever they believe is the only belief you're allowed to have, and if not, you're pushed out. I've definitely gotten into a couple of heated debates when it comes to talking about things like trans youth, when it comes to things like detransitioners, when it comes to things like being a Trump supporter, when it comes to being Republican political ideology. I definitely say when I was a little bit more red-pilled, that's when I found that most people in my life definitely sort of backed away, and these people being in the LGBT community, they definitely were not interested in what I had to say. They sort of close their ears and they sing. They would rather not hear something that is contrary to what they believe, which I don't ever think is a really good way to sort of affirm your own belief system. All you're doing is giving yourself confirmation bias by choosing to live in an echo chamber.
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs?
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to agree. That is true information.
There's still so much transphobia within the people in the LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Shoot, there's transphobia within trans people.
Absolutely.
When I was transitioning in high school,
One of the things that I absolutely hate is when people say like, oh, it's internalized transphobia. It's like, no, it's not internalized transphobia. Like, I don't hate myself. What I do is I love myself and I'm willing to accept reality. And reality is that I'm a biological male and that I've got gender dysphoria and that I'm living as a transsexual woman. That's not called internalized transphobia. What that is called reality. And I love myself regardless. I don't think I need to sort of put that out there. But a lot of people will say there's like internalized transphobia for people who have sort of my belief set.
I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world, and now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own community half the time. Like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff. I played lacrosse, I was in a frat, but like I wasn't that guy, I guess, that they had in their head. And every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul like I was just this awful thing, and it's always just made me feel invisible and small in whatever space I'm in, and I find that just
another thing that I know is that when it comes to the LGBT in New South Wales and Australia, when it comes to being trans people generally will not be friends with other trans people. They'll try, but it always ends in flames, and it always ends in a fight and drama. I have a couple of theories as to why, but I'm not going to sort of like put them out there today. That might be a topic for another video. Yeah, I would say that trans people aren't fans of other trans people.
And it happens in a lot of other cultures and communities as well too. So
It's funny that
it just happens.
You mentioned like the transitioning in high school part and like that shift from, you know, searching for acceptance outside and then turning around and then having to search for acceptance within the community.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when, you know, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew, and then you get that icky feeling of like, you only want me here because of that. And you know, now I have the D-trans aspect where no community wants me. No one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, detransitioning was the thing that I've been called a traitor.
Yeah, me too.
You know, it's,
Me too.
they don't want me. The rest of the world doesn't want me.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I know a couple of detransitioners. I would say that the biggest thing is that people find that their existence is politically inconvenient. I would definitely say it is politically inconvenient, because what it does is it sort of shows the downside of being trans, and where we maybe should be drawing some more boundaries and barriers into where people should and should not be allowed to transition. I think that we need to really make sure that being trans is something that is extremely gatekept, because it is something that is so irreversible and something that is so final and something that is lifelong that you have to commit to, and that is something that I don't think that most people are ready to actually make that commitment to. And people will say that all those points are inconvenient to them. People want to say that detransitioners don't exist, but they really do exist, and they exist in really, really massive numbers. And I would say that of the new generation coming up that is youth at the moment, that we're going to be seeing 90 to 99+% of them starting to detransition in the next couple of years. And it's going to be really, really looked down upon the liberal community. They're not going to be accepted, and that's where we're going to see a lot of people sort of coming over to the conservative side, because I think that if anything, the conservatives really, really can empathize with understanding people who have gone through this ideology, because we can all see it from the other side and realize what's wrong with it. But when you're on that side, you don't see what's wrong with it. So when we see people starting to detransition and have no sort of community and no people who understand what they're going through, I think that they're going to start coming over to the side of the conservatives, because funnily enough, I would say that the Republican and conservative side of politics is where you'll find the most tolerance and acceptance when it comes to differences and difference of opinion and difference of political view and ideology, and of life, and differences of people who have lived varied lives.
That's not true. That's not true.
It can often feel that way. It can feel isolating.
But it feels really isolating. Like, this is not a club.
It's not a
you
club.
know? And it's not like a personality trait that I'm just taking up, and God forbid one day I change my mind. I won't, but like, or something happens where I have to detransition, I would hope that the people who stood by my side through everything else would still be there for me because of who I am, period. And not because of an effing label over my head.
And even when I transitioned, I dealt with the traitor to everyone. It was, you know, oh, you want to be a man and the patriarchy. And I was like, I get it, but also... Also, yeah. But what I found very interesting was like this divide between trans men and trans women. When I first started doing a lot of advocacy, I was told that just being in the space, that I was taking up too much room, that I was taking up too much space and don't speak and all of these things. And I was like, wait a minute, but I'm trans too, right?
Yeah.
This community also belongs to us too. Right. So that was something that I grappled with for a while.
I hung out with a lot of gay women, and then when I transitioned, I definitely lost my space there, and that was like really hard for me to navigate, because being shunned out of these female spaces for me was really hard and difficult. And then when I got to the trans male community, there was a lot of competition. Who looked the best, who passed the best, like that was very difficult.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of trans men, something that they find and learn very quickly is that the difference between men and women is that women generally have a circle of close female friends, and they have a sort of mini community amongst their friends, whereas men sort of generally don't have as the same type of community system that women do. So for trans men, it would be very isolating for them to go from being someone who is part of like a group like that and a little community of like female community to sort of being more a lone wolf type situation, which I feel like a lot of men do experience.
A full beard, so it's like an easy, like, you know what I mean? Like, but still, like, I heavily resonate with trans men still, and I definitely resonate with trans women from detransitioning and gender non-conforming people. So it's like, where do I belong?
Weird position to be in, because it's like one community, like I said, doesn't really want you, but you don't fit in. You can't really go all the way back, so you don't fit in with the rest of them.
We just shouldn't have to categorize.
Yeah,
like, we shouldn't have to float around, wonder where we belong. Like,
we have the other detransitioners, but even then.
Yeah, but there's like shouldn't, and then there is like reality. And it's like reality is like the LGBT is not a fan of detransitioners, and detransitioners don't sort of have their own community. And I would argue that the LGBT community is really sort of just like a lie in itself. A lot of the people who are part of that queer community are self-identified as queer and not even as gay or a lesbian or as bisexual or as trans. They're a demisexual or they're astro gender, and it's sort of like, it's just nonsense. it's a nonsensical group of people who all think the same way. What the LGBT community really is, it's sort of just like one little echo chamber with one tolerated belief system, and it's very extreme and it's very radical, and if you don't belong in that sort of echo chamber, then you're sort of cast aside.
We're all still vastly different individuals who have vastly different life experience, political views, religious beliefs.
Right.
You know,
You're not
experience
just
how we
detransition.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
that's no different
Experience how
with
we
the
got
trans
here.
community, right?
In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like you're, even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual for almost the first time after, you know, spending my high school years being lumped in by both the LGBT community and the rest of the people in a category. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
Bye.
So that was the last section of the Detransitioners versus Transitioners Middle Ground Jubilee video. If you liked what you just watched, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. My name is Alex Daly. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you.